They don't care about you. And I think that is something that people need to understand. They don't care about you. When they're making policy changes, you think they're doing that because they care about John or Mark that works at the off license? They don't give a damn about you.
I've been raising a lot of flags lately. Am I racist?
There's nothing wrong with raising the flag, as I said before.
What do you think of today's immigrants?
They don't really see England as their home country. They see it as a transitory nation whereby they can come in and come out as they please, take what they can, leave, and take their money out and send their money back home to wherever country they came from.
How can you tell us to go? We're not going nowhere. We are here to stay. Like I say, we're not here to take part. We're here to take over.
Like, you're asking for chaos, personally. If you keep this up, there's going to be civil uprising in this country. And as I say, it's got nothing to do with race and everything to do with the quality of life. You've got energy crises going on where people can't even afford to pay their bills. And there's just a lot of issues here that are under pressure. On top of that, we've got the migratory issues as well. We can't just have an open border and allow people to come in and, do as they do without oversight and without some kind of imbalance going on, which is exactly what's happening now.
Is all this problem on the Labour Party alone?
The Conservatives have definitely exacerbated the issue, but the problem is with the Conservative and Labour Party now is that they're cut from the same cloth. They're both the same. If you look at their policies and their manifesto, they're basically the same thing. Conservatives have become less conservative over the past 2 decades, and we're looking at two forms of socialist parties right now. That's what they are, which is why we've seen the emergence of reform.
We will not be cowed. We will not be silenced by anybody. We are the British people, and we want a common sense government back in charge of our country. We're going to fight for it, and we are going to win.
Here's another one. What do you think about the money we're giving away to Ukraine?
You have to remember, the funding that we are putting up for the Ukraine, as well as the United States, someone's getting back-end money off of that.
You've been silenced for very long, and every time you try to resist, they put you in jail.
For my children.
You've controlled your mind for so long to the point where you let them decide what your kids should learn, what gender they will be. And now you've let them to come for the whole nation, destroying what Britain once stood up for. They use this media machine not to report the facts to you, but to tell you what to think and what you should do.
Always be careful.
They're hiding the facts behind the noise, and they're recruiting pedophiles to tell you how to behave. And these politicians you meant to protect you, they're out there smashing your head on the ground. And no jail time for them. This road we've been on has been very dark for a very long time, and it's time to shine a light on the truth and advocate for justice. We the people make the nation, and if we don't stand up and advocate for justice, then we certainly won't make this nation great again. So we have to create a place for that, a place that can contribute to a more informed society. And that place is Next Frontier Media. I don't know if you're familiar with what's going on in the UK, but because the last video I've seen of you, you've seemed very pissed off of what's going on.
Yeah, I'll definitely say it's a frustration. Yeah, sure.
And it seemed like you're not a person that's into politics, and you don't really talk about it as much compared to what you've been talking about in your videos. But recently, the last 5 videos of yours, it's been more of like a patriotic, defend the flag and all that sort of stuff.
Well, the last 2 videos at least, yeah. I mean, the other stuff is political, but it's with regards to a completely different subject matter, so it's not entirely the same thing.
Yeah. So there's a lot. This movement is happening across the country. More and more people are becoming aware of what's going on in the country. And why is that anyway? How come the people now trying to get involved today?
I think, to be honest with you, it's just over time. I think if you put something under pressure, eventually there's going to be a reaction. And I think a lot of people are just coming out of the woodwork because they're sick and tired of how things are being run and how their voice isn't being heard. I think it's a combination of people feeling disenfranchised and not proportionately represented. And as a result of that, if you're going to alienate the entire population of a country of people that grew up with what I said in the video about British values, they're going to start feeling like they're just being ignored. And then now we're seeing the results of that in all shapes and forms, by the way, not just, people that are sensible, but you're also going to see more extreme right views on all these issues as well, which is something to worry about too. And primarily that's to do with the misproportional way that we vote at the moment. The voting system that's currently in place isn't very effective for immediate change, because it protects the existing administration that's currently in. So we're going to have a delayed fuse here, where by the end of this 4-year term with Keir Starmer, I think there's going to be a lot of outrage, and you're going to have far more people swaying to the extreme right because they're not being heard. So they're just going to get more and more frustrated, and that's going to compound on itself, I think. So I think it's just going to get a lot worse, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Because when I was young, I didn't see none of these. I was never interested in going out there and vote on politics. My dad used to talk about it every time, even till today. I probably
Yeah.
say he's the one that got me involved. Now, when I seen back then, it was actually, I would probably say it's 2017. There was not that many things happening. But
No.
in today's time, it seemed like a big change has happened. What do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think the public people just close their eyes and they're just walking up like now this is happening and they need to fix it fast? Or did it?
Yeah.
Because it seemed like we just got here very quick.
Yeah, well, no, the thing is, it's not quick. I just think that as I say, you put a frog in hot water and you slowly boil it, the frog will sit there and, boil to death. I just think that we're at boiling point right now because these things aren't being addressed. You're seeing people like me that don't really dive into this stuff, diving into this stuff. And, it's visible when you go out and you see what's going on, you see the crime that's being committed and you see the people on the other end of that. It doesn't require any form of intellect to work that out. It's very obvious what's going on and it's not being addressed, and that's why we're seeing a rising number of people shouting out. I mean, I'm genuinely shocked by the response from my video. I didn't think it was going to. I thought it was going to be far more one-sided, but the vast majority of responses have been, that they're in complete agreement with me. And this isn't just an isolated incident to people who are Caucasian. This is a national issue for anyone that grows up in this country. So it's a problem for everybody. It's not just a minority.
Right. And obviously sticking to that point, right? The biggest issue that's happening right now in my perspective, and probably likely a lot of people, is the segregation of these cultures, like having a culture here and here and here and here. It's like we're living in a tribal world now. What do you think is happening, and where do you think is the end of this? Because surely it's not the best thing we're doing right now, as we can see. So what's the worst thing that can happen?
I think personally, with regards to that, I think that's primarily to do with our soft policies and this indoctrination that, as I said before, raising the British flag is some form of anti-Semitic behavior or some kind of digressive attitude, which is completely wrong. There's nothing wrong with raising the flag, as I said before, but we've gotten to a point now where anything mentioned about being British or sort of reinforcing values in that nature is considered digressive and racist, and which is why there's all this lenient policy around different cultures being allowed to embrace their own thing before respecting the place where they're living first, which is why there's not been any oversight over those things, which is why it's been able to grow the way it has.
Right. So sticking with that as well, you see, we got these, I don't know, the extremists, right? Because you mentioned about the far right. We don't want to get that far because there's going to be a lot of chaos. And we also don't want to lean this much to be acceptance into whatever thing the people are doing. Because in my perspective, because I've met a lot of people in my life, because I used to do door to door. So I've met a lot of patriots out there that served in this country. They went out there in their life to serve for this land and protecting the flag. But today's world, we're seeing young men going out there, young girls going out there and burning the flag. So my question is, do you think it's an immigration problem, or is it just the way we just let them not integrate to our culture and our value? We just want them to come in and have a part of their Great Britain for themselves. Do you think that's the problem, or do you think it's just the people that we bring in?
I think it's a combination of both. I think it's a combination of soft policy on that particular issue and enabling as well. But I also think that because of our immigration policies, it's reinforcing other people to do the same thing and abuse the system to their advantage. So they don't really see England as their home country. They see it as a transitory nation whereby they can come in and come out as they please, take what they can, leave, and take their money out and send their money back home to wherever country they came from. So I think we're on a very slippery slope because we are turning into a transitory nation where people are just passing through, using it for what they can, and then going about their business. But again, it's not reinforced. And as I say, the more that we don't address these issues and allow people to just do as they please without enforcing our own local law and respecting our local culture, without it being looked upon as some kind of digressive movement, it's just going to keep escalating and getting worse for sure.
I've noticed online a lot of slightly racism that's slipping in right now, and I think we kind of need to be careful with that. And
Absolutely.
I also think there's a lot of Islamophobia that's going around. I think we also need to be careful with that. How can we draw a line of having these guys to also stimulate with these guys and just have one culture as a country? Like, hey, we speak English here, and we do this here, we respect this flag, and if something was to happen to this country, we go and fight for this country. How can we change that? Because it seemed like if something was to happen to this country, most people would just run away because they don't have the best interest in this country. And where did we go wrong with this?
I think personally with that issue, again, that is reminding people when they come here that this is how we do things here. And you know, when I moved, because I lived in America for 10 years, and the first thing I received when getting my visa was a document that entailed all the things that go on within American culture and how to assimilate to that culture if you're living and working there. It was an official document from the government that they send you when you get a visa package. I don't know if we do that here in the UK or reinforce that, but it's a when in Rome thing. When you go to another nation, you respect the local culture force before indoctrinating your own. That doesn't seem to be the case. As I say, certainly with the left-leaning governments we have, that their soft policy reinforces that kind of narrative, whereby people aren't told, okay, if you're coming here, this is how we do things. Here's a rule book of what we do here. Bear in mind, we're a Christian nation. Some people would argue it's Protestant and a little bit of Catholic. I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. But overall, Anglo-Saxon, Western European, that's how we do things. That's all just been shoved to the side and disregarded, which is why, as I say, people are allowed to do what they want to do and in the manner that they do it in.
Yeah, but some people might argue that it's being set up that way because when an immigrant comes in from, let's say, Iran or let's say Pakistan, they usually get put in an area where there's more Pakistanis there, or they get put in an area where there's more Iranians there, which creates this little bond. It's like, we own this road and we own this road, and anybody that try walk past is trespassing our little mini country inside.
I see what you mean. So like promoting segregation.
So it's a setup from the government.
I agree. No, I think that there is definitely isolated pockets of communities where you would only see certain types of people living there. That I think that's quite inherent of any Western nation. I think, in fact, the Americans are worse for doing that. Where we integrate a bit better than the Americans do. We're a bit more progressive than they are in that regard. But again, if you go to somewhere like Birmingham, that is very, very apparent and very, very abundant. And if you go to sort of like Leeds, some parts of Leeds are like that, Manchester, other cities outside of London, I would definitely say that's the case. And certainly in some parts of London as well, where there's not much of this integration going on or the adoption of the British culture. Again, it's a combination of factors. I don't think it's down to one thing, but I do think that these changes will be looked at in the future and gone, well, you know, if we addressed this earlier on, this wouldn't have been an issue and there would have been more assimilation going on. Because when I was growing up, that was just how it was. You know, I'm under 40, so I'm a millennial. And I always experienced that from day dot at school. There was integration at school and there was diverse culture at school. We had kids from all over the place at school. But there was this common ground where everyone was taught British values at school. And that was just set in stone. There was no sort of identity politics as there is now. There was no sort of discussion over, are you a boy or a girl? There was none of that. It was just the very basics of what we need to conform and to act in a sensible, respectable way.
I want to bring into the law enforcement into this. How come when you care about this country, you're treated it bad by the law enforcement, but when you don't care about this country and you're all about race, this, the law enforcement appears to bend over you, especially in the incidents in Hare Hill in Leeds, and also the incidents that happened 2 days ago or a day ago in Manchester Airport, and where the police is getting almost sacked and arrested allegedly.
I think that's blown out of context. To be honest with you, you know, we don't know the full story of what happened at Manchester Airport. I can't speak on the Hare Hill situation, but I know, given that I have a lot of friends in law enforcement, that there's this attitude towards police that most of them are inherently racist or seem to have some kind of ilk towards certain people from certain places. That isn't the case at all. In fact, we have one of the most professionally trained police forces in the world compared to most other nations. I can tell you this: if you went to some parts of Eastern Europe, Eastern Bloc Europe, where most of like Slavic nations, there's none of this nonsense. There's none of this PC culture, they will deal with you hands down. It doesn't matter what you've done. If you're on the wrong side of the law, they will deal with you. It doesn't matter what they do to you. So we've got this.
How come there's a
Yeah.
line though? Like, let's say if somebody, let's say literally a soldier got stabbed 70 times in front of his family, right? That's a person that risked his life to go defend the flag and defend the land, so we can have the freedom that we have. And
Absolutely.
guess what? The media comes out and try to defend the person that did it with mental health issues, which is kind of silly, right? But
yeah, absolutely.
when something else happens on that side, they happen to just run away and leave it alone. And it's what do you think of that? Because for me, it's kind of annoying, especially for the especially on the white side, because I got a lot of white people friends, which obviously I really love and respect. And I feel like they're not being put in first as well.
Yeah, I think that this is to do with. I think this is very much to do with woke culture and feels before reels, as I like to put it. I think there's a lot of stuff going on whereby people address how you feel first and your mental state of mind before actually addressing the real issue. And if I may, I just want to go back to the situation at Manchester Airport. All you heard, if you listen to it carefully, is the words, he ain't done nothing, he ain't done nothing, he hasn't done anything. That's always the case. There's no reason, and the argument for the people that were being dealt with was that the police officer was harassing the mother. No, there's no reason for police to harass somebody or do anything of that nature whatsoever. They were clearly doing their job. They obviously felt that these people were doing something suspect, so they investigated and they pushed. Now, at an airport, there are certain policies that have to go by for police, whereby they can enforce more dominance over these situations because it's an airport. Okay, if it was on the street, it's a different situation, but because it's in a very sensitive area, they need to address it quickly and deal with it. These are armed police, by the way, so they're even more highly trained than the ones that don't have guns. In the grand scheme of things, I think that what they were doing was completely justified, but we don't have the full picture, so it's not fair to go, oh, this police was just abusing someone, because that's not how police operate in this country. It's just simply not true. That is not the case. And as I say before, it's ammunition, certainly for the left, at least, to use this as a scapegoat to allow current policies to stay as they are, so that we can allow the free movement of immigration, whether it's legal or not, within this country, to keep doing what they're doing without anyone standing up to it. And in this case, when you do, you're labeled a racist or a bigot. So it's surrounded in a lot of politics, I think, that particular issue.
So I want to stick on this topic here, because it is it is the one that when you speak about it, you're always labeled as, racist, Islamophobic, all these words that they just throw out there, which is kind of making the word mean less now. But what do you think of the organization that is known as a Muslim voting, or the brother?
So obviously, as we know, there's a growing number of people that want to represent Islam in the House of Commons, and that number is growing very, very rapidly, which I think is an area of concern that I think needs to be addressed very quickly. Certainly given the, dare I say, the subjective views that some people act upon when it comes to Islam and what they think they're doing in the name of Allah, for example. It's a very subjective area. And if you look at the Quran and you look at some of the verses in there, some of it is it's sort of very Old Testament stuff that I don't think applies to the 21st century, if you ask me. But that is something that needs government oversight immediately before that is allowed to grow uncontrollably. Because what you don't want to do is have a growing number of people enforcing the law of Islam in a Christian nation, when we forget that the vast majority of people in this nation are still very much indigenous and Caucasian or second or third generation, such as myself. So if you choose to alienate those people, there will be a civil uprising. You're not going to be allowed to just have that happen without oversight and people going, hang on a minute, let's have a look at this first. Let's put some things in place here before we start allowing this to seep through. I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing, but what I am saying is it does need the British law to have a look at it and go, okay, hang on a minute, let's address this first before we allow this to grow or get pushed any further, if that makes sense, in a democratic manner. I'm not saying just to eliminate it completely.
There is some place in this area that the police, what we all know now, is called the no-go area, the no-go zone, right? And in this area they happen to have their own law, basically, where if something was to happen there, they would just go and protest and just write stuff. Some might be justified, most of them are not justified, like burning a bus, like flipping a police car. That's a public property. We pay for that.
Yeah, I think that sounds to me more like a sort of a vigilante world where people can just choose to do what they want to do in terms of the law. I think that's a major issue, and I think that that is definitely something that needs to be addressed. By by the court of law, at least, to understand how it's gotten to that. I think to understand how it's got there, we need to see where we're coming from. And again, that's not only to do with policy, but I call it the Tony Blair version of 2, which is the first time that Tony Blair was in office, he was very much open borders about this thing. This is Tony Blair's legacy that we're living through right now. This is what he wanted: open borders, mass immigration to support our laborers and our foundations. That's not what it means at all. And I think that we're now seeing the second version of that, the second iteration of that coming through on a macroeconomic scale.
But some people might argue that it's also a conservative problem as well, because the conservatives were there for like 14 years, right?
Yeah.
And they haven't changed anything. And since
No,
Tony
they haven't.
Blair in 1998, 1997, that time when he got in. So you would argue, some people might say, hey, it's also these guys as well. They accept the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, they've certainly, the Conservatives have definitely exacerbated the issue. But the problem is with the Conservative and Labour Party now is that they're cut from the same cloth. They're both the same. If you look at their policies and their manifesto, they're basically the same thing. Conservatives have become less conservative over the past 2 decades, and we're looking at 2 forms of socialist parties right now. That's what they are, which is why we've seen the emergence of reform, is because they've gone, oh, right, well, they're quite similar. Let's have something new. And then we've had 4 million people subsequently vote for reform because they actually represent something that's more right to centre. So I think that's been allowed to happen based on socialist policies, for sure.
Yeah, I would argue that if we was to change this first past the poll, we'll probably get Nigel Farage in there in 2029. Do you think that could be possible?
I think that is more than possible. And I think after we've had 4 years of Starmer, I think you'll be seeing a lot of people pushing very hard right. And as I say, that's something I'm concerned about, because you don't get the good without the bad. And unfortunately, because of how things are going to go over the next 4 years, you're going to see extreme right individuals, dare I say, almost neo-Nazi types coming out the woodwork going, yeah, like get rid of them all, blah, blah, blah. That's not what I want either. I would consider myself a conservative liberal. I wouldn't consider myself a far right individual or just overly right, because I believe in fairness, but I also believe in diplomacy, a democratic society, but something that is just. So equality of outcome is a terrible doctrine. Equality of opportunity is a good thing, but trying to level the playing field for everybody, no, that's not. It should be based on burden of performance.
Right. But we are seeing that kind of shift where a lot of people are shifting that side, and it's only a matter of time till the young generations go that side. And we all know how the young generations are. They usually don't think with their brain. They just go out there.
Absolutely. Certainly the generations behind us.
I don't know about you, but I'm in that generation. I'm 21, 22. Sorry, 22.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going
Fair
fast.
enough. Yeah, I'm a bit older than you. So yeah. No, to be honest with you, I think that, as I say, I think a lot of young people feel disenfranchised. And certainly from the messages I received from that post, that I've had a bunch of 21 and 22-year-olds that are asking me questions as to how to prepare themselves when they enter the world as a young adult. And I think that there are genuine concerns there that aren't being addressed by our politicians. That's their job. That's not my job. That's their job to be addressing these issues. And the fact that you've got people that can deduce from what's going on that this is going to be a problem for them as they grow up, like, that's a problem. Like, you've got young people coming out to people talking on TikTok and going, how do we fix this? Because my local MP isn't addressing my problems. So what else are we supposed to do? Do you know what I mean? Stand around with our hands tied behind that. I think it's a joke. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
And I think that so go on.
Yeah, no, I just think that, those people, I care deeply about others, and I think that's, I'm very compassionate in that way, and I just don't think it's fair for young people to go through a lot of hardship right now. It's going to get tough out there. The last generation, before us, they had access to housing, they had access to easy mortgages. It was a much easier life when they were our age, between the ages of 21 to, let's say, 35. Now, with the rate of inflation, no one's catching up, even with their high-paying jobs. No one can catch the rate of inflation, which means we're living in an inflationary world where no one can survive under this level of pressure. So you've got all these financial constraints, as well as all these social issues that are not being addressed. Like, you're asking for chaos, personally. If you keep this up, there's going to be civil uprising in this country. And as I say, it's got nothing to do with race and everything to do with the quality of life. You've got energy crises going on where people can't even afford to pay their bills. And there's just a lot of issues here that are under pressure. On top of that, we've got the migratory issues as well. We can't just have an open border and allow people to come in and, do as they do without oversight and without some kind of imbalance going on, which is exactly what's happening now. So now we're seeing people running to social media, belting out their complaints, such as myself, and raising some legitimate concerns that need to be addressed by our politicians. So I think it's only going to get worse and get a lot more severe over the next, let's say, 4 years from now, for sure. Absolutely.
Brother, I completely agree with that. Sticking with that topic, I think it's all, well, here's my perspective on this. I think it's all about prioritizing the people inside, because what we've seen in Ireland, Dublin, is insane. It's the fact that they are investing a lot of money, well, people's money, taxpayers' money, into helping illegal immigrants, people who have broken their laws. Now here in the UK, we're basically doing the same thing, where Keir Starmer obviously scrapped the random plan, which is what we're gonna get to now. Now he has no plan. He's trying to hire somebody. Nobody wants to take that job because it is a hard job. Because every day you're gonna get asked, like, "What are you doing? What are you doing to fix it? What are you doing to fix it?" Nobody wants that job, and so that way, whoever comes in gets to stay. And how do they get to stay? Because people like us, people like you, who are paying their taxes, fund these people, and we have homelessness going up to the roof. We have child poverty going up to the roof, but we're still bringing more people in and give them houses and give them money, and most of them don't even want to go to work. What do you think is happening here? Because it seems like they don't really care about the people inside. Why is that?
I've always said this about politicians. They're cut from a different cloth. I mean, a lot of these guys, they grew up indoctrinated into the world of politics. A lot of these guys are Etonians, and they went to schools that a lot of politicians went to before them. And so that's also part of our culture, which I say is a little bit detrimental. I don't think it pays dividends to a 21st century Britain. I think the system that's in place now does not work for a democratic society in 2024. So I always use this as an example, but I remember when Cameron went out and was doing some public talks and discussions and went to go and meet his constituents, right? I can't tell you how awkward that man looked in front of local people. He was so out of place and so uncomfortable. Like, it's all over YouTube. I remember watching it. I was like, Jesus, these people are so far removed from reality. They've got no idea about their own constituents. So again, what goes on in the House of Commons is a bubble. It does not reflect what truly goes on in real world England, which is why I've always advocated for a presidential system in this country. I think a presidential system in the UK would be far more effective than the Houses of Commons, the House of Lords. That entire system needs to be scrapped. It doesn't work. It's completely nonsensical. And, you know, it's all about tradition and history and blah, 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 up my own rear end, whatever. That doesn't work anymore. And that is why we are seeing this disparity between the government not addressing local issues first and prioritizing immigration reform, immigration issues primarily, and housing all these people. Because you have to remember, the funding that we are putting up for the Ukraine, as well as the United States, someone's getting back-end money off of that. We know, that Boris Johnson stopped Zelensky from signing a treaty deal with Putin that would be a ceasefire deal to deal with this situation. He stopped that because he was trying to allow, dare I say, the Biden administration, as well as BlackRock and Vanguard and all those other people, to go in, invest in money in the infrastructure rebuild. So that's why, and I'm pretty sure that he got a piece of the pie. Absolutely, he got a piece of the pie for that. So a lot of people think that's relatively controversial. I don't at all. I think that the Americans and the British over the past, dare I say, since Iraq War, I think we've been destabilizing nations and causing absolute riots and havocs everywhere to have some sort of financial and political gain. I think we've been doing that for a very long time. We've destabilized practically all of the Middle East since the mid-80s. That's what we've done.
I can agree with that. You can see what's going on in France now. There's literally riots happening everywhere. Like, Olympics is taking place and incidents are happening left and right. Centers. People don't even want to. They don't feel safe in Paris. No. Sticking with that topic as well, where the politicians are not working for us. Like, I would argue the only person that actually went out there and meet the people in their constituents, I'll probably say, was Nigel Farage and the Reform Party. While Keir Starmer was going out there and talking to businesses, talking to people at work. Go outside. We want you to go to the park and talk to local people like us.
I mean, I agree. And I think that this is also another point that people need to understand, is that Nigel Farage he knows how to work a room. It's primarily based on a populist vote as well with him. He's a character that people can rally behind. Keir Starmer is not that guy. Keir Starmer is the guy that you see at an accountant's office that works in the back room. Like, he's not a leader. So it's very difficult to relate to Keir Starmer. Some people refer to him as Brian Redondo, which that's a story for another time. But the issue is that you've got to have some sense of leadership. You've got to have leadership qualities, but you also have to have a voice that transcends across the nation. Keir Starmer is not that guy. Okay, bearing in mind 80% of people didn't vote for him, including people that didn't go to the ballot box on the day of voting. But in the form of Nigel Farage, he was very intelligent, very clever in the way that him and Richard Tice, pushed reform on social media. Now, this is something that I think that the other two parties could take a leaf out of their book for, is that they're so disconnected with reality that they don't even realize a way to win the young people over is to be on TikTok, be on social media.
Yeah.
It's incredible, the rally campaign that Reform had on TikTok. It was incredible. Like the music they used, the way that they talked about their policies, it was very enticing. It was very interesting. And a lot of people were like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I want to get behind these people because it's relevant and it's logical and it makes sense. That's something that the other two parties don't do.
That is true, because
Yeah,
we've seen it here in the general election. You can only get in front milkshake on your face if you're out there in the public, right?
absolutely. yeah, that's true. Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to stick on this one because it is a hard topic, and it's very insane to even think that these politicians are not even working for the people that think elected them. Now, this time came out a few months ago saying that he prefers to speak at Davos, the World Economic Forum, than at Westminster. I bear in mind he works for us. We the one that put him there, so he should love being in that place and talk and pass the bills and negotiate and discuss what they should do for the nation. Why is that? Why do you think they all lean into doing all these world stuff like the net zero? They focus on the things that doesn't really impact the day-to-day people. Like, I don't think so. Somebody like James right now, let's say James is working as a construction. Do you think he's thinking about global warming or anything? No, he's thinking about feeding his kids, paying his bills, and putting petrol in his car so he can get to work the next day. And hopefully he gets to retire early. But why are we not prioritizing that?
Well, as I said to you before, there is a disconnect between politicians and their constituents. And when these politicians spend a lifetime as cabinet members and finally get a chance to be prime minister, there is a sense of self-success there. And I think that that can't be ignored. And I think that he talks about Davos and all these other things, COP28 or whenever the next one's going to be. This is a business opportunity for Keir Starmer. So when he goes to Davos, he's rubbing shoulders with people to make deals so that he can benefit from them whilst he's in office for 4 years. Remember, these guys only have a term of 4 years before there's a re-election coming up. So in that time, they're going to maximize their ability to do what they can gain in that time versus what they can do for the people. Simply because I think people are confused as to how politicians operate now. They say that they're public servants, but not really. It's primarily these days, it's for their own political gain and to try and advance their own career in a short space of time. They've got no interest in dealing with current domestic issues within the UK. They've got absolutely no interest in that because they know that time is finite. 4 years is going to go like that, and they're going to prioritize what they think is going to be the best outcome. And unfortunately, most politicians are very short-sighted. They don't look at the big game. They don't look at the long picture. And they aren't interested in the average guy. They don't care. And I think that is something that people need to understand. They don't care about you. When they're making policy changes, you think they're doing that because they care about John or Mark that works at the off license? They don't give a damn about you. So I think people would be wise to do their due diligence, do their homework, and understand that the system that we have in place today that was set hundreds of years ago isn't the same system. Which is why I said before that we need a presidential system here, because it's far more personal and it's far more integrated into what the local indigenous or people that moved here when they were young, people care about for this nation first, which is why I advocate for that. I think that's a very good point.
This one's going to be a bit hard for some people. I don't know about you. What do you think about the current monarchy that we have? Because for me, I low-key feel like I'm not going to tell you what I think. What do you think about it? Because our king, God save the king. Course, his net worth just went up by 100%. Now he's a billionaire. He was worth 500 million literally 2 weeks ago, and boom, out of nowhere, is a billionaire now, King Charles. And the NHS is suffering, and all these public sectors suffering. We are policing. Sometimes they're not getting the proper training and stuff. Right? What do you think is about this monarchy that we have? Because obviously you said you'd prefer to have a presidential way to do it, but with this kind of monarchy what we have, I'm sure that's probably impossible to have, right?
I think yes and no. I think that certainly with William at least, I think that he's a bit more adaptable to what a modern day monarchy would look like compared to Charles. Obviously, Charles is still, I think he's still very much part of the way the old system used to work. To be honest with you, I think that it's a time for the monarchy to step up and take some initiative. Really, I think that if that's the kind of money they're bringing in, I think it would be very wise of King Charles at least to have a look at some of our policies. Look at the defunding of the police, for example, and how our streets are not safe the way they used to be. And I'll leave this as an example. When I go out during the week, or like if I go to the West End or something, most clubs now do have dog services right outside the door. So they've got people to be there for the sole reason of protecting people walking out that have watches and jewelry on, because they know they're either going to get tailed on the way home or they're going to get robbed right outside the club. And these are high-end clubs. I'm not talking about some back-end alley somewhere. I'm talking about nice places where these people target. And 9 times out of 10, as I've spoken to a lot of security there, they say, yeah, mostly they're always people that don't really speak English most of the time, because they know. Going back to what you said before about the monarchy thing, I do think that they should take a more active part in getting involved and stepping up their game. Certainly William as well, because obviously he's next in line. And if that means raising money for funds to NHS for emergency services, that's the backbone of this country. These people are the unsung heroes. You know, the amount of times I've been in hospital for accidents and various other things is stupid. But every time I look at these nurses and these people that have nursed me back to health, they deserve better. They simply deserve better, and they don't get it. They simply don't get it. It's ridiculous. It's insane.
I think I would 100% agree with you, because most of my family members are work in a hospital. And some are due to work in a hospital as well, after obviously wants to do good in school, which obviously I see the struggle that they go through. And when they come back home, their feet is hurting because they've been standing there for 12 hours. They've been helping whoever came through, like their loved one, without being discriminating what color, whatever it is. And I low-key think we kind of need to give a lot of respect to these guys and not maybe reduce their taxes or maybe increase their wages, something like that. But it seemed like it's just going to some of our campaigns.
I mean, it's logical, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it logically, that those are things that we should be doing to support the foundations of our country. At least look after the people that protect you and keep you safe. Police, fire, emergency services, paramedics. Those guys are like, they're like a Swiss Army knife. They do everything. They drive around in their own car with their little backpack on, saving people in the streets. Like this is a logical reaction. It shouldn't take rocket science to come up with these solutions to say, look, let's make sure we've got this taken care of so that at least we've got people safe, protected, and can be nursed back to health. At the very basic level, transport for London is another one. Like, those things should be heavily funded because it's things that most people use. Why would you take money away from something that most people use? Why would you take money away from our military services in the Navy, the Army, and the Royal Air Force, and then have the leader of the Royal Air Force make a woke response saying, because I'm a pilot by profession, saying, oh, we don't have enough ethnic minorities fighting planes. Do you think warfare cares about your color? Come on. Warfare is warfare, okay? Warfare doesn't go, oh, no, that person's brown, we won't shoot that person. But no. There is a burden of performance that has to be met. And if it doesn't get there, this is just logical stuff. This isn't rocket science, you know?
It's so stupid to think about it that nowadays they prefer not somebody who's good. They're like, okay, oh, we got too many whites. Oh, we need one black guy. Or we need one guy.
Or we need some, multicolored transgender here just so that we can feel more proportionate. Like, I'm sorry, no, warfare doesn't care about your color, creed, or sexual orientation. Doesn't
exactly
care.
That's insane. Let's move into Sadiq Khan, right? You was very vocal about Sadiq Khan is London, because as we speak right now, as of April 2024, this year, a new report came out. Out of thousands of people that are out there, let's say 1,000 people are there, 106 people will be assaulted, and that could be violent, that could be sexual, that could be all these sort of things that's happening in London. And it's it's getting to the point where this year 9.5 millionaires are leaving the country because they are unsafe. Of course, the last report that we've seen is like 2 suitcases of people in body parts in a bag. Silly stuff.
I heard that last week.
One guy going around with a bow and arrow. What the heck?
With a crossbow.
Yeah, so we've had Sadiq Khan for a long time now, I'll probably say, and he's still got his time to come as well. What do you think of his London today?
To be honest with you, I think Sadiq Khan I think he's a result of bad policy again, but I think he's snuck his way in through a lot of financial campaigning, which he's still paying for now, which is why we're seeing the expansion of ULEZ, okay? This man, I think at the moment, is probably the public enemy number one, probably for London and soon to be the UK, because the stuff that he's implementing is killing, don't be confused, is killing our economy. Certainly when it comes to ULEZ expansion, you've got people that have been driving into past the Greenbelt into London for 2-3 decades. He's now making that borderline impossible. So people have to choose between giving up their day job of working as a labourer in London or giving up their car because they can't afford to operate both without coming into London to work. And his response to that was, oh, we're doing this because it will reduce CO2 emissions. We know that all of the information surrounding the CO2 was faulty. We know that it was addressed, and he ignored this, but it was addressed and said, look, we know that your cabinet has tampered with information with regards to CO2. This has no bearing or any change by not only increasing ULEZ, but bringing the speed limit down to 20 miles an hour. hour? Absolutely not. If anything, it's causing more traffic, more pollution, and more problems. And the issue is when you reduce the speed to 20 miles an hour, one thing I do, because I drive every day, it's much harder to figure out if someone's slowing down to let you pass if you're driving at 20 miles an hour than if you were driving at 30. So anticipation is also an issue that he's not addressing at all. And I've seen many accidents happen this way. So I personally think all of his policies in London are dire. I mean, and the funding cuts for police and the politicization of the police is also, he's directly responsible for that as well in the increased crime.
So he's been there. He's been there before, right? He's made the mess before, but we still got him elected.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I as I say, and you know, this is something that you raised before about, you know, we've got potential Islamic politicians coming through to uphold Sharia law. I mean, I don't know if that's gospel, but we're also seeing a growing number of Islamic people supporting Sadiq Khan, which is why he's in the position he is. I think that he has a vast majority of the Muslim votes, which makes up for a lot of pockets of London. And I think a lot of people went out of their way to vote for him when it came to for the mayoral re-election process. And not a lot of Brits, annoyingly, don't vote. Again, we know 80% of British people did not go out and vote. This is what happens when you don't vote. And, you know, I think within the Muslim community, they're acutely aware of that. They know that most British people that are born here don't go out and vote. I didn't up until I was about 23. Before that, I was like, oh, what's the point? It's not going to make a change. Yeah, it does. Your vote makes a difference. That's the problem. And people don't think it does, but it actually does.
I think you're speaking the truth, bro, because I went to obviously cast my vote in this general election. And when I went there, I was expecting to see a lot of people in the line, a lot of people in ballot box in that place. But do you know who was there? Those two ladies, and both of them were working there. Nobody at all. And I stuck around to see maybe there's going to be a lot of lads that's going to run in. But no, there was only one person, and that was me. I went in there. It was silent. I thought it was closed. I cast my vote. Obviously, I ticked on that reform box, of course, right? So
likewise,
and I walked out, and it was silent. Nobody around. It seemed like it was like nobody was going there. And you could see that there was not that many footprint that went there because they had cakes. You see, they had cakes around. And obviously, I'm assuming if you go there, you'll probably pick up a cake. And guess what? All those cakes were still there. So it just shows that nobody has been there yet.
Well, this is the issue, and this is why I think it's so important that we locate the population of young people and we address people on the objective reality of what's going on, which is why I did the video. And as I say, that's how you pull the younger generation in and make them understand the consequences of not being proactive. So as a result of that, Reform have done a very good job of pushing their campaign and their manifesto on TikTok. I think it's brilliant. But again, the other two parties don't really do that, and so you don't really see much Labour or Conservative presence online in that regard. But I think that's a way of captivating and capturing the younger person's votes, is by being in the areas where they operate, which is TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, you know, and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a lesson that politicians really should be picking up on to make sure that we grab a larger group of people next time round for the election coming up in 4 years.
This one is more of like it's personal to me, right? Because I had a lot of people that served not in this country, but my background in Congo served in army, right? They love their country. They'll take a bullet for it, and they would hate to see somebody burning their flag. And it was my uncle. He did really well. The guy had a bullet wounds on him as well, and he still was happy for it. He's happy that he took the bullet for the country, right? But here, I see that when it comes to army recruiting, British army, right? We got this thing going on with Russia, right? Russia is getting aggressive. Russia has a lot of good friends backing them. We got China in there, North Korea, we got Iran. These guys don't like us. They hate us. They literally want to take us off the earth. They want to do anything to kill us, right? And Moscow is growing very, very, very big. And we got Ukraine. Now we got UK, right? We are involved in this war as well because we are obviously supplying them with our shipping and all these sort of things, with money as well. So, but here's a problem that I want to bring up as well. And I would like to get your take on this is British Army Force. Their recruiting has reduced worse than ever. They can't get people to join the army. We need people to join the army. So my question is for you, how come a lot of people don't feel the pride to go out there and take the bullet and go in the front line and defend their country?
It's an easy one, really. That they feel disenfranchised and they don't feel proportionately represented in government. And I think people have the ability to access information now that they probably once weren't able to in the form of social media. So they can research how things took place. And as far as I'm concerned, if there was mandatory conscription at this moment in time, I would not be comfortable fighting under this government based on not only their policy, but the fact that they don't feel represented in government. And I think people have the ability to access information now that they probably once didn't weren't able to in the form of social media. So they can research how things took place. And as far as I'm concerned, if there was mandatory conscription at this moment in time, I would not but their negligence on the part that they have no interest in providing some kind of logical progression to protect their own first before bringing in others. And people are acutely aware of that, which is why we've seen such a massive drop in recruitment in the forces. Just to be clear, when I was younger, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. That's what I wanted to do. And I went to RAF Cranwell, sorry, and I did my officers training there. Well, I attempted to at least, and I didn't pass the medical. Again, I don't take that personal. There is a bar. If you don't meet that bar, that's it. Sorry, it's military. That's how it works. I took the civilian route and I ended up becoming an airline pilot. That's what I do for a living. But if I was to do that now, I just don't think that the current climate is conducive to have a force that's mentally strong and physically strong. We've masculinized women and we've feminized men. So it's very difficult now to see mass adoption or mass recruitments within the military forces. I believe a general famously said a couple of years ago from the US Army that England is no longer a tier 1 fighting force, and that we've gotten to a point now where things have reduced so much within our military that we could barely protect ourselves if it was necessary or required to at any time. Which is why we're part of NATO, because we're part of a bigger whole. So fortunately, we've got other nations there. But, you know, I've got a bit of a controversial take on this. I think that in the West, at least, I think we've lived long enough to become the villains. I don't think we're the good guys anymore. I don't think we're the good guys anymore. And I think if you look at Iraq 1, Iraq 2, and you see the way America goes in and destabilizes governments and put their own puppet governments in, I think we've lived long enough to become the villains. I think we're the aggressors now. I don't think we're the good guys, which is why you've got to be able to deduce from looking at the bigger picture as to what's going on. And I think that Russia in its own right is saying, look, you've pushed further east than you said you would after the treaty. We need to clamp our foot down here. But enough's enough. Why are you on the border of Ukraine? So, and Putin has a point there. I don't agree with how he's dealt with it. I don't agree with him sending in his troops. I think there could have been a more diplomatic approach to this. But, you know, we're not entirely innocent here on our side either, to be fair. And, you know, all you need to do is bring up the Nord Stream pipeline. I mean, we all know who blew that up, and it wasn't the Russians. So you see what I mean? So, like, you know, it's a very complicated situation that we're in. But I think, it's a pretty tricky one.
Yeah, and I think when you speak about it, you seem to be what people would call you anti-Britain, even though it's the truth. We've seen it with Nigel Farage. We've seen it with George Galloway telling the truth, and everybody just thought these guys hate Britain. No, they are telling the truth. This is what happened. Boris Johnson went out there and he messed it up.
Yeah, he messed it up. And also, this is something that people don't know about, which was actually on a Sean Ryan podcast a few months ago. There was a British ex-Special Forces guy on there that was talking about the situation in Iraq, right? And one of the cabinet, it wasn't a cabinet minister, but it was someone who was tasked with inspecting weapons, WMDs in Iraq. And he went out there twice. This is a famous story now within the intelligence community anyway. So he went out there the first time and he said, look, there's nothing out here. So he went back and reported to Tony Blair, there is no weapons of mass destruction in that country. There's nothing there. He was like, right, go out again and have a look. So he went out a second time, came back and reported to Tony Blair and said, look, I've done my job. There is nothing there that would make them a threat to the Western world. There are no WMDs. That same man was found in a woods a few weeks later with his throat and wrists cut in a forest somewhere, and he worked directly for Tony Blair. So yeah, and this is a famous story. He's on a Sean Ryan show. This guy was an ex-Special Forces. I'm assuming he was SAS, but that was an insider job. So yeah, so that was an inside job.
I didn't realize about this. That's insane. Like,
so he went out twice, and and then after that he was killed. And this is I think it was a cabinet minister or something.
I think I don't think we're allowed to even call ourselves a democratic country anymore if that does happen.
Well, that's what I mean. And then that's kind of a direct response as to how things are going the way they are right now, is because we're really, you know, I think this is what happens when you absolve yourself of any consequences and you just go about your business doing what daddy tells you to do, daddy being America, by the way, you know, just doing as you're told, because we're not in a position to sort of set our own path. But that's why we're seeing disparity on the streets. That's why we're seeing people raise their voices and say, look, this is not right. Something's wrong. Something needs to change. And that's why we're seeing this.
Exactly. And one more thing. This might be very, I don't know if you want to speak on this, bro, because the last thing I want is a lot of people start coming at you, is the Gaza situation, right? Palestine, obviously, it's a long history with them and Israel.
Yeah.
But in today's time is affecting everybody. UK, an MP member from Scotland, I forgot his name, he came out there and said that we should take people from Gaza, right? And Nigel Farage said, no, we shouldn't do that because these people would come with, you know, a lot of things that I said would come with this. We might take gangs, we might take the Hamas people. You never know who you're helping. You might take a kid that's really seen hard stuff and is ready to revenge when he gets old. Cool. Now, my question for you is how come a lot of Middle Eastern countries, like the one that they would call a religious country, Saudi Arabia, wouldn't help their brothers out? They're close to them, right? And how come people like Egypt wouldn't help them out? How come Lebanon, Syria, all these guys around them, of course, some of them are struggling themselves. How come they're not reaching out to be like, hey, if we say we're brothers, come in here? How come they have to come to the UK? And why is that anyway?
I think you could sum that entire argument up with one thing, the US dollar. I think the US dollar is a direct result of why some of these Islamic nations that neighbor on, you know, Gaza and the Strip, is because they are influenced too much by money. You know, certainly the Egyptians as well. They talk a big talk, and you know, but to be honest with you, again, I think they're heavily subsidized by the Americans not to do anything. Saudi Arabia, you know, their biggest client is the United States. The United States buys the vast amount of oil that comes out of Saudi Arabia. So they're not going to start taking in Palestinian refugees knowing that America and England support Israel. They're not going to do that. It strategically would be a very bad move because you'd see maybe the value of the barrel go down significantly as a result of that. But also it's to do with back-end deals and various other treaties and agreements, which is why you're not seeing any movement there. There's too much political association where if one country makes a wrong move, they could jeopardize you know, a future of finances that could be obliterated overnight. You know, and I think that is what Americans have always been very good at. They're very good at propaganda, and they're very good at intimidating people into doing what they want them to do. So I think that's why there's been no movement, if I'm perfectly honest.
Right. And if UK was to pass this law, pass this bill, and bring people from Palestinians here, what do you think of that? Are you in support of that?
Do you know what? Given the situation, you have to understand that England set up this agreement for Israel, for a place for Jews to live, which was what we know now as you know, Israel. So we are responsible directly for them being there. However, I don't think the British knew at this point that, you know, we would be basically bringing in the other side of that argument, which would be in the form of the Palestinian refugees. I think there would need to be a review of policy, but I don't see why that wouldn't be a problem. I think there would be mass protests in this country if that happened on both sides. I think people are pro-Palestine and people are anti, and that is because of the British ties with Israel as well as America. But I think from a logistical point of view and purely from logic, it's very abundantly clear that Israel have overstepped their mark. Okay, it's abundantly clear. It doesn't take rocket science. Yeah, it doesn't take rocket science to deduce, as I said before, when you apply a bit of research into this, what's going on. You don't need to be bombing schools when you've got, you know, the iron, what's it called, the Iron Dome, which is the anti-missile system. It's like bringing a nuclear weapon to a knife fight. Like there's no comparison between what Hamas are doing compared to what Israel have done in return. There's no comparison. It's ridiculous. Like
that's a heavy
it's not fair.
Comparison, but
yeah, but that's what it's like. Like literally, you've got the IDF, which are highly trained, and from my perspective of aviation, the Israeli Air Force is the most experienced Air Force in the world. They've had the most combat of any other Air Force in the world because of this situation. So those guys can fly. They are top. Like outside of Top Gun in San Diego, but those guys are the go-to. And so I'm sorry, but it's like exerting far too much force on like a mouse's house. It doesn't make any sense. They've completely overstepped their mark.
Let's say they actually passed the bill. Let's be optimistic with this, right? Gazans are coming in, Palestinians are coming in, and obviously we have a lot of businesses here, and most of them are invested by Jews, right? Because we all know the Jews have a lot of money, you know what I mean? And let's say although they're not as many, they're not too many. Let's say they are unhappy as well. They're like, what the heck is going on? you guys draw that thing and you gave us this land. Because obviously we all know British is very good at drawing lands for people and breaking lands and giving out giving out maps that they never. All right.
Yeah.
let me not cause an arguments in the comments, but don't you think that would cause? It's like bringing a problem here. Then we're gonna feel it now because you're gonna get Jews and Palestinians fighting here.
Yeah, you, to a degree, you're correct. Yes, you're importing their issues over here, and then they're going to have those same issues here, and there's going to be conflict here in some way. I definitely agree with that, and I think that again, that is why this is for the lawmakers to look at and policy to be looked over to see how that would work. But to ignore it completely, given that we're responsible for the Jews to be there in the first place, there has to be some sort of British intervention at some point, right? We can't just sit here going, oh well, just good luck, may the best man win. Like, no. There needs to be some kind of oversight where we step in and go, right, let's deal with this, let's sort this out. And the Americans as well. Despite them, I think the Americans have a bit more of a clear stance on this. I think they just want to continue to fund Israel despite all the protesting. I know that they recently, I'm not sure what, I think didn't they give a grant for more funding to go to Israel recently for this situation? Or were they providing funds on the other side? I can't remember.
They're pro Israel. They are super pro Israel.
As far as America's concerned, they want Palestine eradicated. Certainly from the government perspective, anyway, because they fund pretty much everything that the Israelis have. But
don't you think? This one might be a hard one, bro. Don't you think if the Americans and if the British people, our government, keep on funding Israel and keep on providing money and military stuff, and let's say they take off Gaza from the face of the earth, and obviously we all know 99% of Gaza of Palestine is Muslim, and we all seen that almost 70% of people who are out there marching and mostly converting into becoming a very violent type of protest now are Muslim, right? Don't you think that, let's say if they do achieve that mission of literally messing up Palestine, don't you think that will create a civil war or maybe a civil conflicts in our country right now? Because if you see America, it's not a place to go. You can't walk past the protest because there's fire everywhere. Flags are getting burned.
Yeah.
Do you think that would cause these guys to be more pissed and take it off the street in that country that's supporting Israel?
Well, yeah, I think that if you do something like that, it breeds extremism. And we've seen this time. I mean, the Americans are directly responsible for half a dozen terrorist groups. If you're going to do that, there's going to be consequences. And what you're going to do is you're going to see a lot more people bombing places in Western towns and cities that are of Islamic origin or believe they're doing the right thing in the name of Allah, right? Because that only breeds more extremism if we were to do something like that, which is why that is not a solution, because you're only going to increase the world of terrorism tenfold if you try and do something like that. Certainly if it's to Muslim brothers and sisters, I think that that's not a good thing. I don't think that's a good move at all. Now, let me just leave people with this, raise the flag, be proud of being British, and remind your fellow peers of how we do things in this country. And I think that's a good starting point. It doesn't mean it has some sort of derogatory incantation or some kind of racist sort of inclination in any way. It's just, I think that is the bedrock of who we are and where we've come from. And I think it's important for people to spread and share those values across our country so that we can unite together as one. I think that's a really important thing.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. But thank you so much. I hope this interview or this debate, whatever we want to call it now, podcast, convert as many people as you probably converted that from your TikTok to become patriotic about this nation. So
absolutely, and address all issues, good or bad. Be the best of British. That's the way we need to do things.
That's it. All our grandkids will resent us.
Yeah, very true.
Thank you. Thank you very much, brother. So then I was born in a refugee camp in Tanzania. At the time, there's so many people ran there. A lot of people were going there, real refugees, after being butchered from
the civil war that erupted in Congo. My parents applied for asylum to all the countries. They waited. Now, then I was born in that camp, the same camp. I'm talking tents. I was born there. Now, we're waiting and waiting and waiting. For 14 years, we were waiting. Now, of course, these guys could choose to wait as well, but these guys hijacked that and they come in the country illegally. Now, the media will brand you guys racist, far right, the worst people here, the worst group here. How come the good group didn't invite me to go speak over there? So I call this the greatest awakening because all the way from over there, there's hundreds of people turning up. It's a Saturday, for God's sake. They could easily go around and watch football and have fun, go on a date, do all the lovely stuff they could do. But instead, they want to stand here, rain or not. They're ready to send a message. And I believe the message will be received today. Thank you so much.
For anybody in the back who struggled to hear this young man's story, one incredible, brave young man.
Oh yes, I agree.
British Christian values, regardless of